Hi everyone, welcome back to this series of PMP practice questions where we're looking at Waterfall specific questions for this particular question set. 10 wonderful questions, scenario based, just like you'll find on the real exam, and also Waterfall because that's still applicable in your project life these days. And also you will see some Waterfall questions on the PMP exam as well as Agile. So both of those two approaches and everything in between. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Let's get into the first one. You're a project manager working in the initial phases of a project, trying to put together a document for your stakeholders to have your project approved. You remember the 5 C's of communication from your studies and decide to use them here. What will you do next? Okay, so the 5 C's. This should be pretty straightforward. Connect each part of the communication. Create a bond, between the message sender and receiver. Usually it's like clear and concise. Oh, here we go. Ensure clear purpose and expression directed to the needs of the reader. Clear purpose, that could be good. And care about the subject and the person. While these 3 are pretty good things to do, I don't think they're directly related to the 5 C's. It's like a clear, concise, clarity, stuff like that. Oh gosh. But it's those sorts of things. And I think this one really fits the bill. So I think we're going to go with answer C here. All right, here we are. And this will give us a clue on what to look for as well. In this scenario, we're talking about the 5 C's of communication, which is correct grammar. Oh, that's wonderful. And spelling, concise expression. So keeping it neat and short and not too long, not too waffling on like I have a habit of doing. Elimination of excess words, clear purpose and expression directed to the needs of the reader, and coherent logical flow of ideas, controlling your flow of words and ideas as well. Page 363 under key concepts for project communications, if you want to check that out for yourself in the PMBOK guide. All right, that was a nice one to start with. Let's see what we've got next. You have been working with the stakeholders in your project for some time, and the communication has been getting more and more tense with each interaction. You perform a stakeholder engagement assessment and discover the majority of your stakeholders are either resistant or neutral. What will you not do next? And with our stakeholder engagement assessment, they're either unaware, they're resistant, neutral, supportive, or leading. And obviously if they're unaware, resistant, or even neutral, we prefer them, we want to bring them up to supportive and leading for our project as stakeholders. So what are we not going to do in order to bring them up to this level? Ensure you're actively listening with each interaction, speaking less and listening more. That's a great thing to do. I think that's great. Increase your awareness of cultural and personal differences. Wonderful thing to be aware of with our stakeholders. Identify, set, and manage stakeholder expectations correctly. I think that's a wonderful thing as well. Sometimes it's just mismanaged expectations. They were expecting something over here, and we gave them something over here, and now all of a sudden they're unhappy, which is not good. So and then we have to manage that. Makes our life painful as well. So what else have we got? Escalate the stakeholder issue to their functional manager to bring them back in line. I think this isn't directly, the way that we would usually do it. Sometimes you can escalate these things to their functional managers, but it's easier to work with them first and see if we can, bring them on side, bring them on board, raise their capability, have them come along for the journey at the same time. So I think this is the one that we're probably not going to do first. In the real world, you may have to do this, but I would use it as a last resort. The first 3 are way better alternatives to do first. So let's go with answer D is what we're not going to do. And there it is. In this scenario, we're talking about communication. There are 4 things that support the 5 C's of communication, and they're listening actively, awareness of cultural differences and personal differences, identifying and managing stakeholder expectations, enhancement of skills in negotiation, coaching, and conflict resolution. So we're going to need those skills when we're working with stakeholders. Page 363 in the PMBOK guide, if you want to check that out for yourself. Really, really recommend that as well. All those soft skills that really will help you, no matter what you're working in, if it's a project or even anything else. And so that's really, really good. How did you guys go with that one? I thought that was very nice. Quite easy to get into. Let's see what we've got next. You have been working on a large database transfer project when the manager for data in your organization identifies the aging systems as a threat to your project. You review this with your project team and decide to perform qualitative risk analysis on the threat. What will you do next? Okay, qualitative risk analysis. This seems pretty straightforward. There are two types, as we know. Qualitative risk analysis, which is your impact and your likelihood. So how likely is it to happen? And then what's the impact if it does happen? And this can be a subjective measure. So usually it can be from 1 to 5 or from low to high, or anything that you choose to give it. Usually there's a rating system. And then often we multiply those two things together to give us our rating. So 4 times 4, for example, 4 out of 5 times 4 out of 5 is 16 out of 25 in total possible risk assessment there for us. But that's just one way to do it. Quantitative is more of our big simulations and financial analysis. So that's a little bit different as well. But do we review the quality of the data? No. Do we assign a probability of occurrence and an impact? I think that's probably where we're going with all of this stuff that I was just waffling on about. Perform analysis on a range of outcomes. That's our quantitative stuff, so our simulations, so that's not that one. And add a risk trigger, mitigation, and owner to the threat. That's what we do in our risk register when we're doing our risk responses. So not that one just yet. For our purposes, let's go with answer B. And there it is. This scenario is talking about qualitative risk analysis, which is described as the process of prioritizing individual project risks by assessing their probability of occurrence as well as their impact, and sometimes other characteristics as well. Page 419 if you want to check that out for yourself, under Perform Qualitative Risk Analysis in the PMBOK guide. So you can go straight there because there's 700 or 800 pages in that book. It's very hard to find if you were looking page by page, that's for sure. How did you go for that one? I thought that was really, really good. All right, let's see what we've got next. You're managing a project that has formed organically around an important process improvement. Okay, so a small project perhaps. You have been given limited resources and a very small budget from the project sponsor. You're planning risk management with your team, but you do not have the resources to complete all the necessary risk tasks. Which step will you remove in such a project? Okay, so we've got we don't have a lot of budget, and we're trying to remove tasks when we're looking at risks. Okay, so we're going to remove qualitative risk analysis. No, because that's that one that we looked at before. We really need that probability and impact. That's pretty much the backbone of risk analysis, basically. So we need to keep that. Quantitative risk analysis, though, that's that big financial risk analysis, the simulations, the Monte Carlo simulations, and all those sorts of things. We could very easily get rid of that. Not 100% necessary in most cases, and definitely a lot more of a financial strain on our project. So I think that one could be our one. Let's see what else we have. Identify the risks. We still need to do that. And plan risk management. I think we still need to do that as well. And usually we could do that as a project manager with our risk manager if we have one. So that would just sort of happen normally anyway. We wouldn't need anything extra like we would with quantitative risk analysis. I think let's go with answer B. All right, excellent. There it is. In the PMBOK guide, quantitative risk analysis consumes additional time and cost. The use of quantitative risk analysis is more likely appropriate for large or complex projects or strategically important projects as well. And if we want to check that out, page 429 in the PMBOK guide, around that risk section, really, really good to check out. Very important for almost every project that you will ever deliver, and really, really cool. All right, I thought that was really good. All right, what have we got next? And we're nearly halfway through this little section. You're doing great. Keep going, guys. This is really, really good. You are the project manager on a waterfall project. Very handy because we're doing waterfall questions. And you have planned the requirements, scope and schedule with your team. You now need to create the cost estimates for your project. What will you not do as part of your cost estimates? Wow, okay. Okay, what will we not include? Contingency amounts to account for identified risks. Whoa, this is good. Cost estimates. So we have our project budget. We add contingency reserves on top of that for risks. So we actually need that. The known cost of project changes and managing project change. Ooh, goodness, managing project change. I think that actually just comes under the normal process of managing a project. So that's a maybe for now. What are we not going to do? We definitely want to do that. Indirect costs at the activity level if they're included in the project estimate. Indirect costs, I would say no, but if they are included in the project estimate, which is this, then yes. So I think we do need that actually. That's a little, if it didn't say that, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I think if they're already included, then yeah, we have to. A management reserve for the unforeseen scope changes. When we have all of that put together, we actually add on top the management reserve for unforeseen scope changes that are still needing to be delivered within our project. So they're still technically part of our project, but we didn't see them coming. That's our management reserve on top of that. That gives us our total cost estimates. So I think the one that we're not going to do, that's the most ambiguous, is answer B here. But just because that's part of managing a project in day-to-day life, let's see what we've got, answer B. All right, excellent. Oh, that was lucky, but I think we liked all the other ones so much, it really just had to be that one instead. Cost estimates, which is the main output for estimating the costs process, include contingency and management reserves for risks and scope, and indirect costs if they're included in the project estimate. Page 246 in the PMBOK guide, cost estimates. If you want to check that out for yourself, really good as well. Managing cost, obviously extremely important for any project. All right, how did you go for that one? I think we're doing really well. I think we're possibly getting better at these things. Let's see what we've got next. Hopefully they don't get harder now, or maybe that's a good thing. We can really test our mettle in these PMP questions. You've just taken over as a project manager on a difficult waterfall project. Multiple project stakeholders have approached you and asked to make changes to different parts of the scope, cost, and the delivery or the schedule of your project. You're trying to figure out which items need change approval and which can just be done. What will you do next? Okay, so what we're talking about, which items need to go through the configuration management process, through the change management process. And to do that, we usually look at the document called the configuration management plan, which items need to be configured, which have been baselined, so they're locked in a place in time, and if they need to change, we need to go through the proper process to change that. So they need to be, that's configuration management. Which ones need to be configured? I think if that's in there, and I can see it in there, so review the configuration management plan for baselined items, that's probably what we're looking for. Change management plan is for the change approval process. That's not relating to the items, that's for the process itself, so not quite, but a bit tricky. Scope management plan also looks at how scope will be gathered and managed and changed also, but again, not which items have been baselined and need to be configured. So again, a little bit tricky. Requirements traceability matrix is for our requirements, matching those up to the scope that we're going to be delivering. So again, pretty close, but I think our best answer is C. And there it is. The change management plan explains the change process. However, it's the configuration management plan that shows which items in your project are baselined and need to go through the change management process. So there we are, page 169, configuration management plan, if you want to check that out for yourself. And now we're over halfway, so you've done great. This is the little section that we're going through, more than halfway through. Keep going, guys. You're doing a fantastic job. Now let's see what we've got. You're new to a project and you've been approached by the functional manager. No one has been able to tell them exactly what the project is about. Oh, that's a bit worrying. And what they need to be aware of, including the high-level scope. Oh, I like where this is going. High-level scope, schedule, risks, and who approved the project in the first place. This sounds like the project charter, but let's have a look. What will you do next? A project charter has those high-level scope, even a few stakeholders, the approving manager, usually the project sponsor, and high-level risks, milestones, and that sort of thing. So it's really just a, and that's what kickstarts our project. And yeah, it's a really good place to start. So check the project activity list and schedule. That's not going to have risks in it, so no. Hold a sprint review to see what the team have developed so far. It doesn't have approvers or anything like that. And that's just for a tiny little increment, and it's not for the whole project, so no. Review the project charter, there we are, and identify the stakeholder impacted by the change, probably going to be that one. Yeah, so it takes it a step further with the stakeholders impacted as well, which is really, really good. Visit the project management office to gather organizational process assets. Those could be artifacts that we use in our project, but it could be anything. It's not particularly specific to what we're looking at. I think for our purposes, let's go with answer C. All right, excellent work. The project charter holds the high-level information you need to get up to speed, including the project purpose, high-level requirements and deliverables, summary milestone schedule list, project risk, stakeholders, and more. And it usually isn't too long of a document, but it's that document that we need to kickstart that project. And there it is, page 155, project charter, if you want to check that out for yourself. All right, I think they're getting really, really good. We're doing well, and we've only got a couple to go. Keep going, you're doing great. The project manager on your project recently left, and you agreed to see the project through as it is nearly complete. The deliverables have been accepted, and you just need to communicate the release to any and all affected stakeholders in the way that they agreed. Okay, what do we need here? So we've nearly finished our project. Do we just close it down? I'm not sure. What will you do next? Okay, so we're communicating though, that's important. Review the communication management plan for how communication is managed. Possibly, I like that one. Communicate the release to any and all affected stakeholders. Oh, this is gonna be tricky. Is it stakeholders? Okay, stakeholder engagement plan to see how they prefer to be engaged. I think that's more not necessarily around communication. Review the stakeholder register for the people you need to communicate to. I think that's good, but it doesn't show how they want to be communicated to. That's more this one up here. And review the resource management plan for the resources affected by your project. That's more who we're going to gather, who we need to deliver our project. So probably not that one as well. I think the best answer for us is going to be that answer A. Let's have a look. All right, excellent. The communications management plan describes how the project communications will be planned, structured, implemented, and monitored for effectiveness. The plan contains things such as stakeholder communication requirements, information to be communicated, reason for the distribution of that information, and more. So everything to do with communication and the reasons why and who we're communicating to. And page 377 in the PMBOK guide under Communications Management Plan, if you want to check that out for yourself. And you know what else we can check out is the last two questions for this particular section. Let's get into these. We're nearly there. You have been working on a project in your organization for some time. In the latest working group meeting, the project sponsor adds a new executive member to the group. As soon as they arrive, they raise a new scope item that was not in the original plan. What will you do next? Okay, what will we do next? So it's a new stakeholder. As soon as they arrive, they raise a new scope item. Okay, so that's going to be quite tricky. Who even are they? Do they have the authority to add these items? There's that as well. So where do we start? Raise a change request to change the scope baseline. I think we need to do a bit more analysis here first. Do we actually have to make the change? Is it a valid change? We don't know. Update the stakeholder register with the new stakeholder details. Yep, that could probably be good. It's a new stakeholder. We need to know where they fit in the greater scheme of things as well. Do they have a lot of control, or are they the customer that we're actually delivering? Do they have a valid reason for this new scope change as well? Raise an issue for the scope change in the issue log. We could do that, yep, because it's already happened. This could be an issue, something that's happened. Update the change log with the initial details of the scope change. That's also a good one because it's potentially a change request, but we haven't really, we don't know if we're doing a change request yet. So it's an issue, yes, an issue, and it's in the issue log, but how do we manage that? It's just a scope item change. So to manage that, I think if we go all the way back to the beginning, the person who's come on board the project, we need to add them to the stakeholder register and start to flesh out the details of that stakeholder so we understand whether we really need to make this change or not. There are a lot of good answers here, but I think they come later. I think we're going to go with updating that register first. All right, there it is. Okay, that was actually pretty lucky, I think. That was a bit tricky. The stakeholder register contains identification information, name and role, assessment information, for example, requirements and potential for influencing the project, and stakeholder classification, such as the impact that we're giving. You know, are we really impacting their area? Maybe we need to listen to them then. And as the stakeholder has just joined the project, this is the very next thing that we need to do. The change control process can come next, but usually not before analysing the impact to your project. So the cost or the scope or the schedule impact as well. So that's very good to know. And we've got page 514 in the PMBOK guide if you want to check that one out for yourself. And you know what else I want to check out for myself is the last question in this particular section. You guys have done an amazing job. Let's get into it. Then we can have probably a little break, a well-deserved break, because you've been doing such a great job. All right, your project team have been complaining about poor stakeholder engagement in a certain part of the organization for some time. It's now impacting the project schedule, and you may need to use your contingency reserve to crash the schedule and bring it back on track. Contingency reserve is technically for risks, so risks that we may have seen coming in our project. What will you do next? But crashing the project, crashing the schedule is throwing money and resources at it, so maybe that makes sense. Let's see what we've got here. Review the cost management plan and access the appropriate contingency reserve, potentially. But the thing is, what are we actually doing here? The team have been complaining about poor stakeholder engagement. So how does that relate to the contingency reserve? Maybe we need to take this back a step actually. What have we got? Performing root cause analysis on the problem with your team. So what is the actual problem? Can we rein this in without using contingency reserves to crash the schedule, which again seems like a bit of a bigger option really. Like, do we have to go that far? Can we actually solve the problem first? I think that could be quite a good answer. Raise the engagement as a risk and escalate it immediately to the functional manager. Well, it's already happening, I think. That's also a maybe, a high maybe. Definitely it's impacting us. Change the way of working to agile to increase stakeholder engagement. That's probably not going to do it just by itself. Obviously, there's still problems, whether it's agile or whether it's waterfall or anything in between. We still have to manage it, and really, that's not going to be a magic, or a silver bullet for us here. So let's say no for that one. But that's the only one that we could really say directly no to. Raising it as a risk, has it already happened? Let's put that as a low maybe for now. So do we perform root cause analysis on the problem, or do we just go ahead and access that cash management reserve straight away? I think if we're responsible project managers, we should try and problem solve this first. So this could be a bit tricky, but let's go with answer B. Okay, all right. Let's see the reasons why here and see what they say. Root cause analysis is an analytical technique used for identifying root causes and problem solving. So that's good. I think this is about being a responsible project manager first, trying to solve it first, then accessing contingency reserves if we absolutely have to. We won't access a contingency reserve until we've properly analysed the impact to our project. So there's that, that's good. Risks must also go through the proper process of analysis, assignment and mitigation before deciding to escalate as a response. Changing the way of work won't magically increase engagement straight away. So all of those things bring us back to problem solving. Page 292 in the PMBOK guide, root cause analysis. Very handy, and also a handy tool to have as a project manager when you're working in the real world. And another handy tool to have is all of these wonderful scenarios that we are now becoming really, really good at. And you can find these responses in your day-to-day life. When you come across them, you'll know exactly what to do. And how cool is that? Also, you're doing such a wonderful thing because project management is everywhere. You're always going to need it. This is a wonderful thing that you're doing for your life and your career. Keep going. I know you can do it. We'll see you in the next video. I cannot wait to go through more of these. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.